We're here today with Lee Buttolph, our COO of our company, and we're going to be talking about cannabis regulations in New York State. This was a first draft that they kind of unfolded. We actually thought that it was public at first, so it's good that it's not, I guess, to some degree. So these could change, but we kind of want to dive into what it kind of means and where people might line up for some of these regulations. Can you give an overview, Lee, of where the current state of licensing is?
Sure. Just to comment on your thought there is that, we heard that the other day, that they haven't actually published to the register the draft regulations yet. So, which until that's done, the 60-day comment period doesn't actually begin. So it's kind of interesting and wondering why they haven't done that yet. Are they in the background making some changes, from some initial feedback? I don't know. But that's kind of a curious development there. But where is licensing? So as of right now, there's a couple different licenses that are out there. So the first one's the conditional cultivation license, which we currently fall under, allowed us to grow an acre of canopy outdoor this summer, which we did. Of course, what canopy was up for debate this summer with some flip-flopping
Totally.
By the OCM that made a little bit of a challenge for us, and we may want to hit on that here at some point. But so there's a conditional cultivation license. Then after that came the conditional processor and distribution license, which was essentially together. So anybody that had been processing under the hemp license was able to get that. Anybody that had been doing 3 out of 4 years or 2 out of 4 years.
2 out of the 4, I think. Yeah.
For hemp was allowed to get the cultivation license. And then as of, are we a month already? Maybe 3 weeks ago, they came out with the card licenses for dispensary owners. So, and I believe they gave out 37 of them so far. What I've heard is that there's a whole bunch more ready to go. There was that lawsuit that came out that essentially stopped them from giving licenses in 5 geographical areas. Hopefully that's going to be settled soon because they have a whole bunch of licenses they want to give out in Syracuse, I think the Herkimer area, Finger Lakes, Brooklyn sort of got nabbed up in that. So as soon as that's done, hopefully we'll be able to get going. So that's currently what is licensed out there. Next thing we're waiting for, and this is, I think, the big part of our conversation today, is just the regulations that the state has come out with for all of the licenses. And so that's what hasn't been published. We're just waiting for that to happen.
What license were we currently interested before the first rough draft came out? I mean, we kind of went back and forth, and we still are kind of going back and forth. We still, if things change, it might make things better or not for us, but we're just trying to keep all of our options open with what makes the most sense. So we were kind of looking at micro to some extent. We'd like to remain lean and mean, and we might seem like we have a big kind of farm, but we're really not when it comes to traditional out of state, operators and how big they can get. But it kind of made sense to do all of our products in house and kind of be somewhat vertically with having retail and all that stuff. So, but
yeah, well, I think you and I, at the very beginning, as we were looking at licenses, were, I would say, a little bit at odds over it. Sure. I was thinking a little bit more traditional. We get a cultivation license, probably a processor, and then a distribution license, something they would call like a stacked license. Be able to be a little bit bigger, do the whole process, but we would definitely be on the wholesale side. You came at it from a sort of a different direction, mostly just from your past experience in some of these other states of, hey, we should be looking at the micro license a little bit more. And the reason for that, and I this is the reason why I came along for the ride with the micro license eventually too, at least in what we thought it was going to be, not what it currently is, but what we thought it was going to be, was that, you know, when the multi-state operators come in and they're 100,000 up to 1 million square foot greenhouse, indoor grows, these monsters, and they just, you know, the prices get, you know, jammed down as low as they possibly can. It's usually the farmers that get hurt in that scenario, and the wholesale side that gets hurt and has to play the margin game. What the micro license allows is you to be vertically integrated, so you can grow, process, distribute, and do retail. And, you know, the state looks at retail as both a dispensary, you know, physical building, and delivery service. Now, what we're hearing now is that they're actually going to add in a consumption lounge license with that, but that wasn't what we were thinking. And, you know, early on, and, you know, this was something that Cannabis Association of New York was pitching, was, what was it, a 5,000 square foot canopy for greenhouse, and then a 10X for outdoor, you know, which would be perfect. You know, do an acre outdoor and do 5,000 indoor. Now, we also looked at this as overlapping canopy.
Right.
So for those that don't know what overlapping canopy means, is most of the time when the state regulators say, you know, 5,000 square feet of flowering canopy, that gives a little bit of room for the growers to say, well, you know, it's in the vegetative state before it goes into flower, so we can have 5,000 square feet there, and then we can have 5,000 square feet in the flowering canopy, and when that matures and gets pulled, all of a sudden the vegetative stuff goes into flower, and so you always have 5,000 square feet of flowering canopy. The state this summer quickly sort of put away any notion that that was going to be. When they see canopy, they mean canopy.
Right.
What isn't going to be allowed in canopy?
As far as
the calculation, like clones and mother rooms, right? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah. And so this is what we're trying to understand too. And there's certain height restrictions based on if you're a nursery, at least under this original draft that we got. You know, as our own cells, we'd only be able to cultivate up to a foot, I believe, unless we have a nursery license.
That wouldn't count towards our canopy.
Correct. And really, you know, farmers want to cycle. They want to, I mean, you have this space. You want to be able to move and stay consistent, especially when it comes to fresh product coming to the market, right? I mean, you really have to scale and kind of, well, not scale, but really have a system in place where you're constantly like perpetually harvesting like once a month, so you can really maintain that. And some of these regs, as we dive into, you know, it doesn't make sense for, there's no talk of that, you know, and so these things do matter when it comes to trying to maximize the space that you do have. And one of the other questions, well, what if it go vertical? Does that just get you know, calculated on top of it? And so, like, really, if you did vertical, would you only be able to do a small one room? You know what I mean? But because it's occupying the same space, you know, so we really need to wait and see. But as we dive into this, we're going to, you know, kind of show some other things that were, I think, a challenge to this.
Yeah, and I think this is what the state's going to run into, is that because they're putting so much detail into these regulations, people are going to start reading them word for word.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, canopy is within this space, and I'm going vertical, you know, 3 stories up, but I'm still within the confines of this 10 by 10 space here, or 10 by 20 space. I'm still within that, but I'm going way up here. sorry, but the regs don't mention anything about that.
Yeah, at least currently.
At least currently.
Yeah.
And I think this is where I would like to see them, simplify things down a little bit. Instead of canopy, I'd prefer almost plant count, for certain things that, use some common sense of this is roughly a canopy size for, a mature plant. That would make this a little bit simpler and help keep people from doing a lot of workarounds and trying to, make it as legal as possible. Well, it says this, and so we did this.
Right.
So I think there are some things, but going back to the overlapping canopy, this is where I think some of the games will be played here. And I'm hoping to the benefit of the nursery license people is, as you noted, I believe we can, or what doesn't count in our canopy is like your mother rooms, your clone rooms, and they can get up to 1 foot. How long does it take to get to 1 foot in plants?
I mean, it depends on the strain. It could go anywhere from 6 weeks to 8.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of people want to turn quick,
Sure.
and play that kind of game again.
So that's a good amount of time, for the plants to start maturing. For the nursery license, under section 123.2, it says nursery shall sell seeds, seedlings, clones, and immature cannabis plants or cannabis plants in vegetative stage under 2 feet in height. What's, really comes down to is what is that extra 1 foot worth to a farmer? And, if a nursery owner charges the right money or not taking advantage of it, you get that extra couple weeks of it not counting towards your canopy size, which allows you to dedicate more towards, the fuller plants and be able to cycle even faster. You may be able to get an extra 1, maybe even 2 cycles a year just from that extra foot.
I do want to point out a little bit of this, and this is something that we're experiencing doing living soils, is it's not very easy. This is a more traditional way, and I would say a more wasteful way, because really you're doing them in pots.
Yep.
And plastic, and the turnaround, and so we're trying to change that a little bit differently. So we're not going to be as flexible with the rounds because we're trying to do the right thing, which kind of there's no award for trying to do the right thing. And I think the regulators have, they seem like very, we're trying to do the right things. We do want like hemp and CBD plastic to kind of turn in, and they're trying to make us be mindful of the resources in growing, right? But that's one that's kind of contradictory a little bit.
Yeah, agree. They talk a lot about plastic and 25% post-consumer when it comes to the end products, but this because they're going to force us to do some things with the canopy. You're right. Like there's going to be a lot of nursery owners that are sending lots of one-time use plastic containers out everywhere.
Yeah, and I did see on the tiers, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but just within those you have, you can do indoor or greenhouse or then outside, and it doesn't seem to, in a lot of these, give you like or a combo like we did see with tier 4 combo, or the combo license on
so there's 2 types of licenses that you can get as a cultivator. One is you can get an outdoor or mixed light. By mixed light they mean greenhouse, or indoor. You have to pick one of them, and even within those there's tiers from from 5,000 in tier 1 up to 100,000 square feet in tier 5. For those that don't know, 100,000 square feet, I think it's 2.3 acres. 1 acre being about 43,000 square feet. So there's kind of, you have to pick, as you said, it's an or in there. But then they also have a joint license where you can get outdoor and greenhouse, or the mixed light as they call it, but not indoor. If you're going to do indoor, you're doing that by yourself, which we've talked about that quite a bit, of setting aside a small room up in our head house and doing some high-end indoor, but not doing that anymore.
Yeah, and that, again, I think my goal was to do a little bit of everything. The way that we've kind of designed this in our theory would be like our outside production is going towards extraction, distillate kind of products, right? Our greenhouse could be more of the maybe extraction plus the higher extraction, the rosins, the fresh frozens. And then like maybe a little bit of indoor would be like that smokable end, and where you can really tailor it to that process. But it has to make sense, because here's the other thing. COAs are expensive, and your final line product, you have to grow X amount to make it worth it. I'm just looking at some of these numbers, and there's so few, and depending on each strain you do, you have to, get that. So you have to produce quite enough to offset that cost. And so this is what another thing I'd like to see maybe addressed at some point, is some of the tax revenue go towards minimizing, testing. So we're all doing it, the way we should be to some degree.
Well, and that's going to be the hardest part. We sort of started on the micro license, that's what we were interested in the very beginning. With what's come out, it's going to be really hard on the micro license people. A lot of it is just you still have all the same regulatory, burden that you've got to fill out all kinds of paperwork. If you're going to do any kind of processing, you have to be GMP certified. You have the additional costs of testing out there. So, you want to be, the state should give a path for the really small people, whether maybe they've been doing, the illegal, grows out there, and they want to come out and be part of the legal market. And so, they want to keep doing their 1,000 square foot indoor grow. And then they look around and go, holy cow, this is all the paperwork I've got to do. Yeah. And oh my gosh, I have all these fees for lab testing, and all of a sudden it gets hard.
And because you're all things, you're vertical, you have all the regulation. You have let's say a delivery regulation. You have the dispensary regulation. You're going to have the processing regulation put on you. I think if, in theory, they wanted this to be like the real small guys to do that. And I think our association put out even a smaller than micro as the craft, and which was kind of a bummer we didn't see that in here, because I thought that would have been a better fit. There was definitely, I think that could have been a real chance for people to get in this. And again, we're not trying to have domination. We're trying to focus on our area and our community.
So they do call out craft product in here. Now, there isn't a craft license, but there is a craft product. And if we look at that, let's see here. Craft product means flower, pre-roll cannabis product, or any cannabis product is established by the office and guidance, which is hand trimmed, hand dried, which I don't know if somebody's sitting there with a fan, drying this thing off. I don't know what that means. And hand packaged by one or more individuals and receives a craft designation from. Okay, so I mean, we could talk all day about hand trimming. We've all, the past 4 years of hemp and cannabis, I've done enough hand trimming to last me a lifetime.
Smoke your whole product, just sort of the carpal tunnel in your hands in doing it, but
it's hand trimming for any amount of flower is, quickly becomes, cost prohibitive, especially as prices start to come down quite dramatically. Yeah. So, it should be interesting to see if that sticks around, where they allow some sort of mechanical trimming with a triminator, or one of these standard products out there, but that's one of the ones that I think is, they should have a little bit more flexibility in.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a funny point, hand drying it, but I'm assuming a lot of this was designed for low tech, low cost, entry level kind of, or the mom and pop kind of people doing this versus having to go out and investing all this in really expensive equipment. We talk about this. We like to say we grow tomatoes and not cannabis because it's really expensive. Like there's a 4 or 5x associated with every piece of equipment that you buy with cannabis attached to it. But that's a different discussion.
Do you want to talk about the micro license tiers?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, as we wish that this would have fit well for us, but once again, the word "or" pops its ugly head up here.
Right.
So, for micro business, shall also indicate the license tier. So here are the tiers. You have indoor canopy not to exceed 3,500 square feet. Mixed light or greenhouse canopy not to exceed 5,000 square feet, or outdoor canopy not to exceed 10,000 square feet. The easy one. The outdoor.
I mean, why would you even choose the outdoor? Because, even if you're doing indoor 4 times, 5 times, if you're cycling, I mean, that equals the one, and you only get one shot.
Yeah.
At the outdoor.
And we grew an acre. So 10,000 square feet is less than a quarter of an acre.
Yeah.
And 1 acre is not that big.
It's not. It
is not big for a farmer.
Yeah. No, it's about the smallest you can get.
Yeah. So 10,000 square feet is really small. And really what it comes down to is how much biomass could you get out of that? Because while there is, I think, room in the market for a sun-kissed flower product or pre-roll, you'd be the first one to say that most serious flower connoisseurs want indoor, then greenhouse, and then unless there's nothing else available, they'd go with the sun-kissed.
It's a market, you would have to market it right. But my biggest worry is okay, what if you do really good and you're out after the first month?
Yeah.
Of your supply, and then what do you do the rest of the year?
Yeah, so that's the next problem. Is if you were going to use it for, say, to ethanol distillate, you were going to make it. I mean, we did, let's call it 1,500 pounds, and we had some challenges with our grow, thanks to some of the flip-flop canopy issues with the state this summer. But you're looking at a quarter of that. I mean, we probably should have been 2,000 to 3,000 pounds if we really, had.
And if we had this early enough, we should have been almost double that.
Yeah.
I mean, these things can get big if you get out there, veg them early enough, but with large scale comes more of a challenge on another end. But
so even if you were at 3,000 pounds on an acre, and if you went with a quarter of that, that's 750 pounds, which isn't terrible, but you're right at that minimum of what a processor is going to want to deal with.
Yeah.
Now, and I've heard this from multiple processors that, somebody that's coming to them with 100 pounds, 300 pounds, 500 pounds, they have to do too many changeovers. They want people with thousands of pounds.
But it's tough. No one's going to have that currently. I mean,
true.
We were in the CBD side where we needed that. I know they've kind of course corrected a little bit on scaling, but still, it doesn't add up a whole lot that you can do with those products because you got to divide it by 30 pounds depending on how well it tests, and 30 pounds per kilo, and and it can last depending on your products. We're seeing gummies a lot better than vape cartridges. Vape cartridges eat up a lot more material. So, that's a concern that we have, is how long and sustainable because the biggest question is you want to sell out your products, right? But you don't want to sell out and have none more
for 8 months of
to
the year.
give. Yeah, and we are seeing that in New Jersey. I mean, you might have in mind that you're going to the dispensary to pick up a product, but that product is usually not on the shelf that you're looking for, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, and you've got to buy packaging.
Yep.
Which has minimums in most cases, or you've got to go with kind of blank ones and you're just putting stickers on,
Yeah.
Which is fine for a lot of people, but you're going to end up with a couple challenges. Do you have enough product to last a full year is the one. And then two, do you have enough product SKUs or product categories in your catalog to keep people coming back over and over again? Because people want their gummies, they want their beverages, they want their vape cartridges, they want the flour. And if you're like, I'm sorry, but I just don't have enough. Like, it's all pre-rolls.
Yeah.
You'll have people call you, but, they're going to want to come for a whole bunch of products. And they know the guy down the street who's a full-size dispensary is going to have not only the flour that you'll have, but all the other products that, your spouse or your friends or whatever, that you're going out to buy for will have. So I think we were both a little disappointed in the micro license because it is so interesting. It's the only one that allows you to vertically integrate. With this license, they're adding in open consumption, lounges. Right. That's, game changer, but the square footage just is a little
tough.
small.
It's tough for the size of our employees that we have and just, but, again, this is a first kind of draft. This might change and it might be more in our benefit. This is kind of some of our challenges. This is why we're having these conversations now, is to just help people understand the full scope of this right now from what we got. How much does it change? We'll see, but it might not. But, I know a lot of people who are sitting at home wondering, this might be good news for them, really, in a lot of ways, especially a little bit more of the mom and pop side. But, you still have to be careful about what you're doing because, it's going to be a lot of regulation on you.
Yeah.
Unless you're really going to just focus on flour and that's it. But still, you need...
You'd still have to be GMP unless you're going to send it to a processor,
right, and
to make it for you, which is going to cut into your margins, and they'll have minimums and a whole bunch of stuff there. So.
Yeah. So after the micro, let's look at the other one, the combo, which was the cultivation, right? Tiers.
Yep. Well, so there's kind of two parts to this conversation here. Or at least a lead off to this conversation is, what are we in line to get as a conditional cultivator?
Right.
So the way that law read, as written, was we are allowed to go into what I call our real-time or forever license at the same size or greater than what the conditional license was. And there's a couple parts to that. The big one is the 1 acre outdoor, and then it was 20,000 greenhouse.
Yeah.
Right? Now, as soon as you did both of them, the total amount that you could do jumped from 43,000 square feet outdoor down to 30,000. So that was combined between the two. All you could do was 30. But if you did one or the other, it was 1 acre or approximately 43,000 square feet outdoor, or 20,000 square feet indoor. So let's look at what the single license, the OR license that we could get. So they're saying we can move into a tier 4 license. So outdoor max with that is 50,000 square feet. Boom, perfect. That's the same size that we could get, with the outdoor. But that's all we can get. So all of a sudden, our greenhouse becomes useless. Mm-hmm. Now, we could go into just the greenhouse, which tier 4 is up to 50,000 square feet. So that's substantially more.
Yeah.
But once again, we can't do outdoor.
Right.
So Is it 1-to-1? I think, you're hearing from people out there already, whether it's, through some of, Canny or some of these other places where there's a lot of chatting, going on, that they don't quite see how that equals the same. So if we go and say, well, there is the combo license, the and license, where we can do outdoor and greenhouse, they say we can move into a tier 2 license there. So let's see here. Outdoor, we could do up to 12,500 square feet, which is considerably less than 43,000 square feet. And our greenhouse maximum size is 6,250 square feet, which is considerably less than 20,000 square feet. Once again, how does that
equal
what we currently have or greater, which is literally written into the laws that we're allowed to get? Now, for somebody like us, does it matter? No, because we're probably going to be able to apply for a tier 3, tier 4, or God forbid a tier 5, some of the build out that's needed there. But we can probably apply and get one of the bigger tiers on the combo license. But once again, this is where people are having a lot of questions with the law when they see stuff that doesn't quite match up to what things should say or what they think they should say.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So that's kind of the beginning of the conversation. Is we're in line for either tier 4 single license or a tier 2 combo license. This is where we start to have the conversation of, all right, well, if the micro's out as written, I think it's going to be tough for us to go the micro route here. So that leaves us with either the single license or the combo license. Once again, I think the single license is probably out, unless we went just purely the greenhouse. But I think we leave quite a bit on the table by not doing outdoor, to get the distillate to make the gummies and the drinks and cartridges and all that stuff. So we're back to the combo license, and not to put you on the spot while we're sitting here with the microphones going.
Yeah.
So, if we look at the tier 4, let's see here. So max outdoor in a tier 4 is 50,000 square feet. So roughly an acre, a little bit more. What did we do in hemp as our biggest? Like how big did we grow in hemp at one of the years? By year 2?
It was closer to 6 acres.
Yes.
So quite a bit more.
Probably not 6 in canopy.
Probably 4 in canopy.
Yeah. So for us, 50,000 square feet or 1 acre, it's easy. We'd probably rather have more.
Yeah.
But on the greenhouse side, we could do between 10 and 15,000 square feet of greenhouse space, which currently today, we say we have 4,000 square feet? About two per each?
I mean, it's more. We could put more in there, but we're just on minimal 2,000 per greenhouse.
Yeah. So with that being said, to get to the minimum on the tier 4, we'd have to put in probably 3 more of our current greenhouses. We'd have up to 6 of them, which would be kind of quite a bit more than we were looking at.
Yeah.
But these are the calculations that everyone's going to be going through. Is
how
do we get there? Hey, I want 50,000 outdoor, but I want some indoor, but there's a min and a max. So the min side is you got to show that you can do that amount. And so I think people are going to be going through quite a few calculations here and do you have to have this built out before you can apply?
It's a good question.
What do you have to show that says, hey, I can do, a tier 4 license?
Yeah, I wonder if they just say, hey, you can be a higher tier if you don't. Or is it, it's scheduled like, hey, I put down for a greenhouse here's our expansion
Maybe a year
goal or a year? I mean, these are great questions that we don't know necessarily.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you've got a year to
get up to speed and
to finish that build out. That would be nice because you'd hate to have to build it out first.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. That's something we've heard from people who
it's a lot of risk ahead of time.
People were expecting the same size or bigger, and so they said, "Well, we could do the acre outdoor," which most of the farmers probably have an acre of land to do it on.
Yep.
But 20,000 square feet of greenhouse, some started building those out, and now they're going, "Whoa, wait a minute! I built way more than 2,500 square feet of greenhouse as the minimum in the tier 2, or even more than the 6,200 at the max side. And now they're going, geez, well, what if they don't allow me to go to a tier 4? My thoughts are that they will. I mean, that's my belief. And once again, that was written into the current regulations, is that conditional cultivators get preference to apply for the new licenses. Let's find the exact language here. Yeah, so a conditional cultivator shall, meaning they have to, be given priority by the office in review of its application for a full cultivator, processor, or distributor license under this chapter. Now, what I think is interesting is the word "or" in there again, which personally I think doesn't quite mean the "or" that we would expect, that we have to pick one of those.
Right.
I think we'd have the opportunity to be first line to get all 3 of those and to apply to say, hey, I want a tier 4. I built all these greenhouses. I'm sitting here. Look, I can do this bigger tier. We should be given that opportunity to level up whatever tier we wanted to be in.
Yeah. Do you think that there's an association now with the gripe that you made earlier with it not equaling our provisional license, and you just could be able to move into a tier that is equal to that? And is there, you know what I mean? Is there a special, I hate making it seem like we're special already. We're very lucky to be doing this already, but does this get us in good, if we have good standing, should we be able to do that sooner than later?
I would think so. I think what'll be interesting is, what happens if the regulations drop, say, July 1st?
Yeah.
Where we can start applying and, they're going to start granting those licenses, say, within a month.
Yeah.
We're halfway through
our planting. Yeah, right.
Conditional cultivation license. Well, what the heck happens then? What if we end up with a tier that's slightly smaller than, the 1 acre we're growing outside?
Then what happens?
Then what happens? Or do we have to wait?
The opposite.
Yeah, are we ripping plants out? Maybe. Yeah. Or do we get a bigger license?
And we could have planted more.
Yep. So
yeah.
What I'm hoping is that the state and the OCM in particular here looks at this and, tries to be pretty fair to the hemp farmers. We've been around for multiple years now trying to help make this work for the state. We played ball this summer. We did the best we could. We played with the regulations. We're trying to move up. And, I would assume that the regulators would like to have everybody out of their conditional license.
Yeah.
Sooner the better.
Right.
Instead of having these 2 tiers of licenses out there, move everybody in and, maybe, there would be some kind of grace period, for us as we're making that transition. So we're either not, ripping plants out, to get down to a certain level. Nobody wants to have to do that. But you also don't want to be last in line, that you missed your shot to make, to get in the forever license and maybe a bigger tier.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there were people that were assigned licenses really late too this last season, and how did it impact them? And and again, I haven't heard that they're going to address anything. We've heard about maybe hearing the final licensing structure before or around midsummer. I think when the last time they pushed, but again, like we want to be planting for our provisional well in advance of that decision.
Yeah, when do we have to start getting seeds going?
The longer, the quicker you can get in, the better.
What's the last date that we can get seeds started? May 1st?
Well, no, I mean, that's if you're going into June.
Yeah.
You know, we'd like to almost come in, you know, right after midway through May, because, you know,
to put them out in the field.
To get them out in the field, the earlier
after
the better.
The last frost.
Yeah. But you can wait and still get pretty good, decent size. But it's veg time, really, you know, on that. So,
but your last, you know, the date that you want to be shooting for is May 1st. No greater than May 1st to get those seeds started. You know, if you're going to have a sizable crop.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot, you know, between that 1 acre, you know, you're fitting, you know, 2,000 plus plants in there.
Yeah. I know we made some changes to how we do our seeds, not to go too far off, you know, direction here, but I know we made some changes in the size of the pots that we're doing, and which we saw quite a bit of benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
From that.
What did space, though?
Yeah, so well, that's true. So what did we end up doing? We went from the 50 count trays to what size were those cups?
Like 18 size tray. So they're quite a bit. It was a 4-inch, 4x4 inch, and it worked really well with our water wheel. But it's more space, you know, larger. Anywho,
yeah, but that did work nice. We didn't get the root bound.
Yep.
And we only did that.
Well, we could get them out when we were supposed to. So
yes,
that helps too.
It does. All right.
So we've covered the tiers for the most part. Let's really. Can you tell everybody what TPI means?
Please don't.
I'm sorry.
But yeah. So true party of interest. So TPI. You hear this quite a bit out of the state, and really what this is meant to combat is you have the wholesale side of the market. So that is the cultivators, processors, distributors, I guess the nursery license people in there. And I think technically they would consider the micro license people part of the wholesale tier. They allow some TPI between micro licenses and processors and stuff. They're a little bit more forgiving there. And then you have the retail tier, which is your dispensaries, your delivery drivers, and the on-site consumption places. And what they don't want is, you know, crossing the streams between the two of them there. And so that, like an example that you would have is like, take cookies, right? Incredibly well-known brand. Everybody wants to buy their products. What the state doesn't want to have happen is that Cookies goes out and buys 3 dispensaries, which is the most that you're allowed to have. But then they're also doing branding deals with processors on the back end, which then really gives Cookies the incentive to only buy Cookies branded products at their dispensaries. Those become true party of interest between the processor, the brand Cookies, and the dispensary owners. They don't want that. And so when you fill out for your license, you have to give considerable amount of detail into your company. Who are the owners? What does your cap table look like? You know, percentage wise. You've got to show any contracts that you have in place, whether it's with your landlord or just anybody. You got to show all kinds of documentation so they can sift through it to make sure that there's not that one person that you're buying from as a processor who also has some small stake in a dispensary. And I mean, I feel bad for anybody that's got to go through that paperwork, because it's going to be It's going to be interesting for them to follow that through. There's a whole bunch of rules that really, in some cases, are above my pay grade at this point in time. To figure out, who's a financier versus a bank versus, an investor, because they've got some of their own special rules of how much that they can invest. One of the couple things we did here is that, and I just alluded to this, but if you own a dispensary, you are not allowed to have a brand. So think of like Wegmans, right? You go into Wegmans and there's a ton of Wegmans brands on the shelves, and Wegmans is essentially crowded out the non-Wegmans branded products, except for the incredibly well-known that, like Coke and Pepsi. If they don't have those on the shelves, people are going to freak out. Not drinking Wegmans branded Coke.
Right.
They've really crowded them out. And so the OCM is saying, nope, you can't do that. So if you are going to be just a brand, you have to get a processor's license. Right. Now, I was told at a meeting with Damian Fagan, who runs the equity part of the OCM. He says, Lee, this isn't going to be a big deal. It's like a $300 application. You don't have to do GMP, good manufacturing practices, right? Like you're just going to essentially private label or white label your product through the processor distribution channel. He says, but we're going to make you fill out that license. We know who you are, who your owners are, what your cap table looks like, who you have contracts with. You've got to supply all that documentation. So that's really what they're trying to figure out here. And there's some other rules about, how much business you do with somebody. And, if you do over $100,000 of business, or I think it's 10% of gross sales, or I guess maybe 30% of net profit, something like that, then you're automatically considered a true party of interest. So for us, if we get a stack license cultivator, processor, distributor, and we have our own processing that we're doing, but we also work with another processor because they make a product that we like, and we end up doing too much business with them, we now all of a sudden are a true party of interest to two processors, our own and somebody else. And it's very explicit that you are not allowed to be a true party of interest with two processors.
Yeah, it's a lot, man, to dive into with that. That's wow. If these weren't the rough drafts and this was our forever, we had to choose today, it would probably have to be a combo license currently, the way that's set up.
I think for your goals and what we're looking for, I don't see how it's not a combo license. And what I find the most interesting is we were all expecting, a monster tier in here.
Yeah.
100,000 plus square feet tier, for the big multi-state operators, giving them something to come in. And we'd end up being, what we call a big little farm. We're still small, but, we've got a few more greenhouses. We've got, a nice head house. So we're a little bit bigger than the small farm, but we are nowhere near size that some of these multi-state operators are. But what's the most interesting is with these license tiers is I'm not sure how the big multi-state guys are going to come in and really play. I mean, not that 100,000 square feet of either greenhouse or indoor is anything to sneeze at, but most of them are, what I know, considerably bigger.
Yeah, it could be 1 million square foot
than that.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting. And really, we all of a sudden going from kind of a big, small farm to being a big farm.
Yeah.
Where, with a little bit of work, we could almost be a tier 5, definitely a tier 4 combo license. And all of a sudden, we're one of the biggest ones out there, which is just something we were not expecting.
I think that they would be going more on the medical side, don't you think? I mean,
well, I don't know if they're giving out any more licenses on the medical side.
That's a very good question. I mean,
because they are going to allow the medical to do dispensary, rec dispensaries now, so adult use, recreational.
So that would be vertical, right? To some degree.
They are vertically integrated, but there's some rules in there for them. One, their fees are in the millions of dollars.
Yeah.
To be able to get those licenses. And I believe the number's 40% of what they stock in their adult use recreational dispensary has to come from other sources than just their vertical integration. So once again, the state's now forcing them, one, to pay a huge fee, and then they've got to come out and buy from folks like us, or processors that we work with to stock their shelves. So
yeah, so that's a great. So do they have to have? They have to have them on their shelves, but they don't have to push those products, do they? Are they obligated to buy 40% of what's in their store?
Yeah. So here's what it says. So, okay. So cannabis product sales requirements, retail. So let's see here. So they must dedicate a minimum of 40% of shelf space available for cannabis products cultivated or processed by cultivators and processors that are not RODs. Those are the registered organizations of medical folks. For a period of 5 years from the first retail sale in New York. So they have to do that for 5 years. But once again, it doesn't, what if they just jack the price up 300% from what they bought it for, and they just say, we're just not going to reorder, but 40% is on our shelves there.
Yeah.
But all they do is they push through, so they take a hit on 40% and just not move it, or move it just super slowly and just continue just to sell their own, products in here.
Great questions, something that.
And honestly, this is one of the gripes that I have about this law is that because it's so detailed,
yeah,
it allows you to look and say, you did not say we need to turn this product 12 times a year.
Right.
It's not written in there.
Yeah.
And so you even though it's super dedicated, and it also makes it super vague because it wasn't written there. And you said, well, you're being super, detailed. I figured if you wanted to be this, you would have written it in there.
Correct.
And so that's just some of the problems that I have just with the law in general. And I think it's across the board for everybody is, I personally would have liked to see a little bit more just outcome-based regulations, where, especially around the testing, we talk a lot about the testing requirements and really that's going to be one of the big things that sets us apart from the black market, right? The underground market is the testing side, but go for the testing. So if you're a small micro business, right, that isn't growing a lot, and doesn't have the people, the staff, the money to really build out a regulatory, machine to handle all the paperwork, why isn't it just, hey, what's the outcome? Was the product good at the end?
Yeah.
Did it test okay?
Right.
Right. And then let everybody else deal with it, how they feel like every other business out there. The government doesn't write, regs for every other industry. Quite the opposite. It's just, hey, have at it. This is a free for all.
Yeah.
This is open market. This is just one of those markets where they're trying to create the perfect market. And unfortunately, time and time again, when government tries to create the perfect market, it doesn't always quite work out that way. There's a lot of unintended consequences. And then so they have to put more regulation in to correct the last one, which breaks other stuff, which opens up new loopholes, and you kind of get into this cycle. So we'll see how it works out. But this is a good example of just dedicate a minimum of 40%. Great, we'll buy the cheapest product we can find. Bottom of the gutter, worst gummies. 1% THC in them. Tiny packaging, whatever, to keep the cost down. But you can point and say, look, 40% of our shelf space has somebody else's gummies. Geez, it's not our fault that their stuff doesn't sell.
Right. you'll see things play out like that for sure. If it was set up this way and we were operating tomorrow, and there's some other ones too where, with the MRTA versus this emergency provisional, and so we'll see how it's fully unraveled. There was a nice article as well this weekend about the investment of the original $200 million. And we don't have to dig into it. You can read those articles for yourself, and say what you want to say. But, we want to have these discussions and get them out there. We're definitely interested to see what everybody else has to say based on these rules and regs. If you're diving in, if you're potentially have an opportunity in here, what you think of them. We're trying to, work together with the community to kind of help formulate some of this and get it out there, and so we can have success, which I think we all want. I think New York has promised and pledged pretty bold statement. There's a lot of really progressive things between, how much you can carry at home between 5 pounds. And so there's some really awesome things, but I know we still have a lot to figure out still.
And we just saw that, one of the flip-flops, not there's the fun side, but the original card applicants were supposed to go into DASNY approved buildings, and that's the Dormitory Authority for New York. And they just weren't able to get it done. And the state was sitting there going, oh my gosh, how long are we going to have to wait till DASNY can buy buildings, retrofit them, put in these dispensary shops and put the owners in there? And so literally this weekend, or maybe Friday, they flip-flopped and said, we're giving up on that. I don't know if they've given up on that, but at least the original people can now go out and get their own buildings, which unfortunately, these people could have been working on this for
well in advance.
2-3 months for now.
I would imagine going down into New York City, as tough as it is to probably find stuff.
Yep.
And then the cost associated with finding some of these locations is going to be insane.
Yeah, so these people who had, wasn't part of their plan, they weren't ready for it, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I've got to go find my own place.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of people, but I know they're working hard, they meaning the state, to come out with delivery licenses, which once again, has its own issues associated with it, but may be an easier putt for a lot of these folks to get up and running, just have a small warehouse, or even, if you were just a delivery driver around here, could they work with local processors and cultivators, just come pick up product as needed? We'll see how that all plays out here. So,
well, about an hour. This is pretty good, Lee. So this is we're excited to get this kind of stuff out there. We're also would love to hear your feedback and what you're thinking of these regulations in the industry.
Put comments below.
Yeah, comments below, and we'll be back. We're going to have some other podcasts where we have other topics that we talk about. There'll be some growing ones and cannabis ones. So stay with us and like and subscribe, and we'll see you later. Take care.